It was 4:51 in the morning, still pitch black, and across the central North Island of New Zealand, people were fast asleep when the ground detonated beneath them. Not a gentle rolling motion, a violent, shallow jolt that punched straight up out of the earth and slammed into the towns above it, throwing objects off shelves, cracking the quiet of the night, and hurling tens of thousands of people out of their beds in an instant. A magnitude 5.9 earthquake had struck almost directly beneath the town of Taumarunui, and it struck from shockingly close to the surface. Within an hour, nearly 23,000 people had logged in to report that they felt it. The shaking rolled outward across almost the entire North Island, reaching Auckland in the north, Wellington in the south, and even across the water to the top of the South Island. And here is what makes this story matter far beyond a single frightening morning. This earthquake struck in one of the most geologically restless, most dangerous stretches of ground in an entire country that is already one of the shakiest places on planet Earth. And it was the second powerful magnitude 5.9 earthquake to hit New Zealand in just 10 days. So today, we are going to break down exactly what happened, why this particular earthquake was so intensely felt, what the science says about the dangerous zone it struck in, and this is the part that matters most, what it does and does not mean about the far larger threats lurking beneath these islands. We are going to separate the real danger from the fear because there is genuine reason to pay. Drop moment when the solid ground stops being solid? I read every single one of these. And if you want to be the first to know the moment the Earth moves anywhere on the Ring of Fire, subscribe right now. It is completely free. Hit that like button too. Let us push for 5,000 likes on this one so the algorithm shows it to the people who live on these fault lines and want to understand them. All right, let us get into it. So let us start with exactly what happened because the details are what make this earthquake so significant. At 4:51 a.m. local time on a Saturday, a magnitude 5.9 earthquake struck about 5 kilometers south of Taumarunui, a town in the rugged King, country region of the central North Island. Now, a magnitude 5.9 is a strong, moderate earthquake, genuinely powerful, but not on its own the kind of number that levels cities. And yet, this one was felt with a ferocity that surprised even the locals. The reason comes down to a single number: depth. This earthquake ruptured just 9 kilometers below the surface. That is extremely shallow. And in earthquake science, depth is everything. Let me explain why, because this is the key to the whole event. When an earthquake happens deep underground, say 100 kilometers down, its energy has to travel up through 100 kilometers of solid rock before it reaches the people at the surface. Along that journey, the rock absorbs and scatters much of the energy. So by the time it arrives, the shaking is softened and spread out over a huge area. But when an earthquake is shallow, like this one at 9 kilometers, there's almost nothing between the rupture and the towns above it. The energy arrives at the surface with its full, violent punch intact, concentrated right over the epicenter. And this is exactly what made this earthquake so unusual for the district, because most large earthquakes in this part of the King Country actually happen very deep. There was a magnitude 6.2 event back in 2018 that struck the same general area, but it ruptured around 200 kilometers down, deep inside the earth, and it was felt as a broad, softened rumble. This one, at 9 kilometers, delivered its energy straight up into the towns above. That is why the shaking near Taumarunui was rated as severe, reaching an intensity level at which furniture slides across floors, objects fly off shelves, and buildings can suffer minor non-structural damage. And that is roughly what happened on the ground. There was damage, but crucially, it was minor. Items were thrown down and broken at a local reuse shop in Taumarunui. Landslips came down on hillsides that were already sodden from heavy overnight rain, and a couple of state highways were closed. By slips, though the officials were careful to note that the heavy rain shared the blame with the shaking. But here is the genuinely good news, and I want to give it to you clearly. Fire and Emergency New Zealand reported no earthquake-related callouts at all. Civil Defense reported no immediate injuries, and no major building damage. Power, water, and communications kept running normally. So despite the terror of being shaken awake before dawn, despite 23,000 people feeling it, this strong earthquake, as we will see, is not an accident. It is partly luck, and it is partly the result of a country that has learned through hard and tragic experience how to build for this. Now, let us talk about where this happened, because the location is the heart of the story, and it is where the title comes from. This earthquake struck at the edge of one of the most geologically active and dangerous zones in all of New Zealand, a region called the Taupo Volcanic Zone. And I need to explain what this place actually is because it is extraordinary. Running up through the middle of the North Island is a vast rift, a zone where the Earth's crust is literally being stretched and pulled apart, thinning out like taffy. This stretching is driven by the immense tectonic forces of the plate boundary that New Zealand sits astride. As the Pacific plate dives down beneath the North Island in a process called subduction, it drags and warps the crust above it, and along this central band, the crust is being pulled thin. That stretching creates a landscape riddled with faults, and it also feeds the most productive volcanic zone in the country. This is the region of Lake Taupo, of the great volcanoes, of geothermal springs and geysers. It is a place where the earth is thin, hot, and restless. So, according to the scientists at GeoNet, New Zealand's official geological hazard agency, this earthquake was caused by what is called normal faulting, the crust being pulled apart and dropping down along a fault, exactly the kind of motion you would expect in a rift zone that is stretching. It happened in the upper crust of the Australian plate, right at the edge of that Taupo volcanic zone where the ground is thinning. And here is a critical point that I need to make absolutely clear, because it is exactly the kind of thing that gets twisted into fear-mongering. Even though this earthquake happened in a volcanic zone, it was a tectonic earthquake, not a volcanic one. It came from the ordinary grinding and slipping of the Earth's crust along a fault, the same process that produces the vast majority of earthquakes everywhere. GeoNet was explicit about this. It is not a sign that any volcano is stirring, waking up, or about to erupt. So if you see anyone online trying to connect this quake to some imminent supervolcano catastrophe, you can dismiss it. The scientists who actually monitor these volcanoes 24 hours a day have said clearly, this was the crust cracking, not magma rising. But, and this is why this region earns its dangerous reputation, this whole area sits on top of and is created by the single most dangerous fault system in New Zealand, the Hikurangi subduction zone. Let me explain what that is, because it is the giant sleeping beneath everything we have talked about. Off the eastern coast of the North Island, the Pacific plate is grinding downward beneath the Australian plate, along a colossal fault called the Hikurangi subduction zone. This is New Zealand's largest fault by far, and it is capable of producing truly enormous earthquakes. Magnitude 8, or even larger, the kind of megathrust event that could unleash violent shaking across the entire North Island and send a devastating tsunami crashing into the coast within minutes. That subduction is the engine. It is the force that stretches the Taupo rift, that drives the volcanoes, and that loads the smaller faults like the one that ruptured near Taumarunui. So when we say this earthquake struck near one of the country's most dangerous fault zones, this is what we mean. It happened within the sprawling, active, hazardous system that the mighty Hikurangi subduction zone has carved into the heart of the North Island. And this is where the second one in 10 days detail becomes so striking. Because just about a week and a half before the Taumarunui quake, another magnitude 5. 9 earthquakes struck New Zealand, but at the complete opposite end of the country. That one hit the South Island, down in the wild, remote Fiordland region, near the town of Teanau, and it was strong enough to prompt the National Emergency Management Agency to issue a tsunami warning. Now, the scientists at GeoNet were clear that these two earthquakes are not directly related to each other. They happened hundreds of kilometers apart, on entirely different fault systems, driven by different local stresses. One earthquake in Fiordland did not cause the other one near Taumarunui, but as GeoNet themselves put it, it is a powerful reminder that earthquakes can happen anywhere in New Zealand at any time. 2 strong magnitude 5, 9 quakes at opposite ends of the country in a span of 10 days. That is not a sign of the apocalypse, it is a sign of what New Zealand fundamentally is. Because here's the bigger picture you have to understand. New Zealand is one of the most seismically active countries on the entire planet. The whole nation straddles the boundary between the Pacific and Australian tectonic plates. It is quite literally being built and torn apart by their collision. The country experiences something like 15 to 20,000 earthquakes every single year. The vast majority are far too small to feel, but a few hundred are felt each year, and the big ones, when they come, have shaped the nation's history. The South Island runs along the Alpine Fault, one of the most significant faults on Earth, which scientists say is capable of a magnitude 8 event and is considered by many to be overdue. The capital city, Wellington, sits directly on top of multiple active faults. And New Zealanders remember painfully what these forces can do. The 2011 Christchurch earthquake, though only a magnitude 6. 3, struck shallow and directly beneath the city and killed 185 people. The 2016 Kaikoura earthquake was a monstrous magnitude 7. 8, that ripped the landscape apart and reshaped the coastline. This is the reality that New Zealanders live with. The ground beneath their feet is alive. And that reality is exactly why the response to the Taumarunui quake was so calm and so effective, and why so little damage resulted from such a strong, shallow earthquake. New Zealand, like Japan, has learned to live with the shaking. The country has strict, enforced building codes designed to make structures flex and absorb seismic energy rather than collapse. New Zealanders are taught from childhood exactly what to do when the ground moves: drop, cover, and hold. They are taught a simple, life-saving rule for the coast that everyone in the country knows by heart: long or strong, get gone. It means if you are near the coast and you feel an earthquake that is either so strong it is hard to stand up, or a weak rolling quake that lasts a minute or more, you do not wait for an official warning. You do not wait for a siren. You move immediately to the nearest high ground, because a tsunami generated close to shore can arrive faster than any alert. System. That single piece of cultural knowledge, drilled into an entire population, has the power to save thousands of lives. Now, what comes next after a quake like this? Aftershocks. And this is important to understand so you're not alarmed. Following the magnitude 5, 9, dozens of aftershocks were recorded almost immediately, the strongest being around magnitude 3, 7 in the first half hour. And one of the seismologists studying the event made a point that surprises a lot of people. The aftershocks from an earthquake this size can continue not just for days or weeks, but for months. That is completely normal. It is the fault and the surrounding rock settling into a new equilibrium after a sudden release of energy. So if people in the Tamarunui district keep feeling small tremors for a long time to come, that is not a warning sign of something worse building. It is the expected gradual winding down of the sequence. The number and size of the aftershocks will steadily decrease over time, even if the occasional, slightly larger one briefly bumps the activity back up. So let me bring this home with what it actually means for you, wherever you live, near a fault. The lesson of the Tamarunui earthquake is not that New Zealand is doomed. Quite the opposite. It is that a genuinely strong, shallow, violently felt earthquake struck a populated area, woke up half a country, and caused almost no serious harm, because the people and the buildings were ready for it. That is the entire game. In earthquake country, survival is not decided in the moment the ground starts shaking. It is decided in all the quiet years beforehand by the choices about how you build, what you prepare, and what you know. So here is what you can control. Make a plan with your household. Know where you will meet and how you will contact each other when the phone networks fail. Because in a big quake, they will. Have a grab bag ready, water, food, medications, a flashlight, and a battery radio. Secure your tall furniture, your bookshelves, and your water heater to the wall so they cannot fall on you. Learn, drop, cover, and hold until it is pure instinct. And if you live near any coast in a seismic zone, burn that rule into your memory. Long or strong, get gone. These things cost almost nothing, and they are the difference between being a survivor and being a statistic. Let me leave you with the bigger truth, the one that these islands teach better than almost anywhere on Earth. We cannot stop these earthquakes. New Zealand sits on a plate boundary that has been colliding for millions of years and will keep colliding long after all of us are gone. The Hikurangi subduction zone will one day produce its great earthquake. The Alpine fault will one day slip. The volcanic zone will keep stretching and shaking. None of that is in human hands. What is in human hands is everything else. How we build, how we prepare, how we teach our children, and how calmly and wisely we respond when the ground reminds us who is really in charge. The magnitude, 5, 9 that shook Tamarunui awake before dawn was frightening, and it was a real display of raw geological power. But it was also, in the end, a story of a strong earthquake meeting a prepared society, and the prepared society coming through it. That is not luck. That is decades of wisdom built into the walls and into the culture, and it is the single most important lesson any of us living on a restless planet can take to heart. We are going to keep tracking every significant quake along the Ring of Fire and everything that develops in New Zealand. So subscribe so you never miss an update, and drop that comment I asked for at the start. Are you in New Zealand? Did you feel it? And have you ever been through a quake? Because behind every dot on a seismic map are real people who felt the solid earth turn to liquid beneath them, and understanding it is how we all stay ready. Let us hit 5,000 likes on this one. Stay safe out there, look after the people around you, and I will see you in the next one.